What's up, everybody? It's Friday. You did it. You made it to the end. We had an interesting conversation on our little local Legion Discord today. Um, and I wanted to record this design spitball that sort of fell out of that conversation. I want to talk about attrition and the skill floor in Star Wars Legion, and then propose a change, and then see what everybody's reaction is. So, get your comments ready. Get your comments ready. All right. Let's take a look. So terms. If you're not like a you've almost undoubtedly heard this if you're anybody who's pays enough attention to wargaming, Legion in particular, right? Attrition is the cost of ongoing engagement, right? So as some dudes on one side shoot at dudes on the other side, they're both losing models and they're getting weaker and weaker as they go, right? And you lose offensive potential, right? Offensive potential would be like the maximum amount of dice that you could throw and the maximum amount of wounds that you could inflict as a result. Cool. So skill floor. Floors and ceilings, we've heard talked about before, but just to sort of refresh everybody, right? The floor is how easy or hard it is to do like the minimum. What's the minimum quality you will output as a player, right? How easy or hard is it to perform average? Um, so a high floor game, it's very easy to execute a competent game plan. A low floor means it's hard to execute a competent game plan. It's really easy to screw up when the floor is low, and you could screw up in ways that are basically unrecoverable. So with that in mind, I think Legion has a very low skill floor. I think the ceiling is also kind of low. I think they've done a lot of things with the initial design of the game to make it approachable. All the stuff you need is in the box. A lot of things are quite simplified and straightforward. The color-coded dice, um, the rules are mostly on the cards, right? Like all that sort of stuff. It's pretty straightforward. Um, there's not too much granularity. There's not too many different versions of things. You don't have to keep, oh, that guy moves 4.5 inches. That guy moves 7 inches. That guy moves 12 inches. Like, right? Like it's not an arbitrary number. It's one of three values, right? Um, But I think with Legion, the skill floor is very low. It's very easy to screw up turn zero, right? And that's Blitz came out of that hypothesis, right? It's you could put your objectives in just completely the wrong spots and be host. You can deploy really bad and be just host. Um, Attrition can snowball, which is good and bad, right? Because you want the game to move towards a conclusion. But it also means a fluky dice roll can swing the game quite wildly. Uh, Other things that can swing the game quite wildly. Command card roll-offs. I still don't have a fix for that. But attrition is a thing. So then one of our local casual guys made this observation. I'm just gonna read it because I don't trust that you can read. No, I'm kidding. But I don't. I feel like part of my frustration with slash reason, I've kind of dropped Legion. And this is a guy who used to play. Well, I'll read the thing and then I'll comment. I've kind of dropped Legion. Is that I really do feel like I understand the game. List building makes sense to me. I can understand the strategy and see how and why you should do certain things. But somehow that just never translates to the table. I just get slaughtered by all of you. Now I'll comment here. There are like four of us who are real sweaty, who play like 3 games a week. And we've been playing 3 games a week since the thing came out. So this is the guy who plays every other week, maybe. Maybe he plays another game, one of those. So he really hasn't played for a month when he plays again. So he's probably got less than 50 Legion games, and I've probably got 350 Legion games. So that's the thing. There's just so much minutia, we're back in quote land here, that even knowing how to play decently well, the game just punishes you so hard for not realizing a tiny detail. Okay. Um, this is another thing. This is the ceiling, the skill ceiling going up over time, and every game has this. As units continue to add to the game, the number of things you got to know to execute well goes up. I hit this wall with Warma Hordes. I played Hordes since it launched, partway into Mark II, not very far into Mark II. There's just too much stuff. I could not keep all the different wizards in this heater. Is way too hot. Ugh, stop. I'm dying. Okay. Got a little space heater in my basement because it's perpetually cold. In the summer, somehow like the AC runs, it makes the basement frigid to keep the upstairs cool. And then in the winter, it's underground and it's frigid. It's just always cold down here. Anyway. Yeah, so skill ceiling goes up just because the number of things you have to know. You have to know all the command cards. You have to know the secret powers of the different battle forces, kind of. You at least kind of gotta have a, you know, you gotta know BXs are gonna throw 4 dice in experimental, right? You gotta know, oh, Dooku's got that extra push with his 3 pip, right? The speed 2. You gotta kind of know that. Like if you really want to win every game, you kind of gotta know all the stats, all the things. So that's real, and like the Legion is rapidly approaching the place where like I can't be competitive about it much longer because I can't keep the thing straight. Um, so there you go. Then later on in the conversation, he added this. I think it also has to do with the nature of wounds slash losing units being snowbally. Once you lose some, you're in a weaker position and you're more likely to lose more. And like I said, like part of that's good because you do want the game to wrap up. Somebody should win. Uh, every game shouldn't end in a tie. It's not fun. But it can be very hard to recover. And it can be very hard to deal with activation disparity, you know, whether or not that's achieved through the course of play, or that's just how sort of the lists started out. So I had some reactions to this, and I was like, look, I think Blitz helps with the turn 0 side of things, and he's played Blitz and enjoyed it. But the tactics flowchart is the same, and it's still relatively complicated. I don't think Legion is a particularly complicated game. It really comes down to timing and target selection. If you can do those two things reasonably well, you can go 2-1 with a shot at 3-0 at every local tournament, um, pretty consistently. You'll win half or more of your games if you can do those two things mostly right most of the time. I do think there's something to the way the objectives and the board size work that makes it hard to run a real casual build, right? So in Legion, and this is not 100% true, but in War Machine here is a decent reference point, right? War Machine, for those of you not familiar with it, that game, the majority of the game was kill the opponent's king piece. If you killed their king, their leader for their army, you win. The game immediately stops and you win. Okay, so it was very easy to roll up to a table and say like, how hard are we trying? And just throttle your list down by swapping in or out a couple units, right? That changed your ability to do that uh, sort of at any point. There were units with tremendous start range that was like, I can always get to you if you give the second you give me an opening, gonna take a shot to win the game, right? Like you just get rid of those things from your list and like now we're gonna have to roll a bunch of dice and kind of see how it goes. Right? So it's very easy to sort of throttle down. In Legion, it's really hard to throttle down. Even if I throttle down, you can lose turn 0, right? Because you can still screw up objectives. You can still screw up deployment. Uh, you know, you can leave a strike team where it's gonna get smoked by a bombard card, right? Both guys are in line of sight. That's just the thing, right? Those sorts of like, and that puts you down in activation. Maybe they didn't even activate. Yikes! Not only did you lose, their 12 potential actions, the way the action economy works, you've still got a token in your bag. So, maybe you're down axe now, but you still can't pass till you've pulled all your special forces, that kind of thing. So it's pretty hard to run a more casual list in Legion. Um, I also think this has something to do with just the disparity in overall unit effectiveness, which I think a proposal I'm going to make here does a lot for, right? And I've done another video on big stompies and how the game needs, right? Um, Shatterpoint, this is like the sameness problem video. Shatterpoint and Legion have too many of the same types of things. Legion should be about big stompy army size things. Walkers, vehicles, cavalry, stuff that's not going to show up in Shatterpoint. We need more of that in Legion and less troopers. Stop making troopers, right? So more big stompies, right? Like a change in the type of units would also help solve this because those things don't degrade, right? In theory, a dewback is better than a squad of stormtroopers because if you shoot that dewback, the dewback is just as much offensive potential with 1 hit point left as it does with all its hit points left. Right? It has no wounds. It's the same as when it has 5 wounds right before it dies. Now, dewbacks are bad because their dream is so terrible at all other points in time. I'm not going to get on that tangent. So we don't have big stompies in Legion, right? We're years out from like a new type of thing being the regular release pattern. This is just the nature of the pipeline. It takes time to design the things. It takes time for the art pipeline. It takes time for full-time production to ramp up. It takes time for things to get shipped across the ocean from the factory and then get to the stores and then get to you, right? Like all of that's slow. But we have seen a version of Legion where everything's a big stompy. It's Spec Ops, right? Spec Ops replaces squads with single mini units with lots of hit points. That when they take wounds, they don't lose their offense. What if everything was a big stompy, the way Spec Ops handles it? So this is my proposal. We need to change the way wounds work. All right, so this would be the rules change. And this is like the minimum rules change. There's like trickle down stuff that I'm going to talk about later that should maybe happen as a result of this change, but for now, this is it. Also, welcome to another TED Talk. We're 13 minutes in. Units do not remove minis when they gain wounds. All right, so that's the big change. When a unit has wounds equal to the number of hit points, which would be the hit points of every mini in that unit combined, right? Because we have squads that have guys of different hit point values. But once you reach whatever that total number is of wounds in the unit, the entire unit would be defeated simultaneously. Pierce removes a single hit point mini immediately if any wounds are gained instead of canceling blocks. Okay. That does a lot. Those 3 statements move the needle quite a bit. But let's look at some hypotheticals because it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around if you're not like used to it. And even if you're used to it, like a lot of times you just gotta like, oh, I did it one time and now I get it, right? All right, so here's a hypothetical. We got a sniper strike team. It's shooting at an enemy unit. They roll 2 crits. Right? You can already tell this is hypothetical because I said 2 crits and not 2 blanks. And I have a picture of Imperial snipers. So, but stick with me because I'm just trying to make the math easy. Okay. So you're shooting, you're 2 black, crit, crit. It's a Christmas miracle. The enemy target then has to roll 2 defense dice. They roll their 2 defense dice, they get 1 block and 1 blank, right? Now normally that would be 2 wounds, right? Because the pierce would cancel the block. It'd be 2 blanks. All right, but in our new model, the target would gain 1 suppression, like normal. They would gain 1 wound from the blank, and then they would remove one mini, assuming they're a 1 hit point squad, right? So strike team on strike team violence, as we're so used to seeing, this washes out the same. My strike team can see both your dudes die, right? And I didn't even really think about like potential wound dealing and how that interacts with Pierce, but whatever. Let's just say it's the same. So it would do a wound, and then it would remove a mini. So if the enemy target, at the end of all that, if the enemy target now has wound tokens equal to their remaining hit points, the unit is defeated. Right? So strike team, that would kill them. You'd have to remove a mini, and they take a wound. So they'd have one dude left with one wound token. That's 1 hit point, matching 1 wound token. They're toasted. Throw them on the ground. Hypothetical number 2. All right, we got rebel troopers. They're shooting at stormtrooper unit in the open. They roll 2 hits, right? 4 black. That's 2 hits. Stormtrooper unit rolls 2 defense dice. They get a block and a blank. They would take 1 suppression. They would gain 1 wound token. They would not remove any minis, right? So the storms can then sit there and aim and shoot back with their 7 white total, assuming they re-roll everything because they're white dice. You never know. Okay, so I think that makes sense. So let's talk about the core advantages of this change. Units won't lose offensive potential when they take wounds. Okay, so you can expose a unit to fire, but you won't lose the unit completely if they get to act again soon enough, right? So why would this happen? Bad order bag pull. So order control becomes less of an advantage. It's still a huge advantage, right? But it'd be slightly less bad if you get a lousy pull and you got to scooch something forward and it maybe gets shot a couple times and it takes 1 or 2 wounds, right? You take those 1 or 2 wounds, you still have those dudes to shoot back with. So you're okay, right? Activation disparity. So this sort of equalizes the value of activation disparity some. I mean, look, you're still going to get shot without the ability to return fire, which is bad. But unless they wipe a unit, you're not going to get further in the hole, right? And you're still going to have all your offensive potential to carry into the next round, which is the thing. And then misplaying, just mispositioning your dudes. Oh, I cohered a little too far forward because I'm new and I'm a dingus, or I'm just bad, or I didn't think about it. Oh, I thought you'd go this way and you went around that thing, and then because I cohered this way, you were a little close enough to get a shot, right? All that stuff still exists, and you're still going to have to be careful with the geometry. But in those cases where a shot lands that you didn't expect a shot to land, you're not going to lose your offensive potential. You're still going to have to move shoot in that cohesion example to return fire, because we're assuming the unit leader's not who's getting shot here or in range to be shot. But the punishment is far less severe, right? Also, one bad save isn't going to be totally crippling, right? You got a 5-man squad, 4 hits come in, you roll 4 blanks, now you're down to just your unit leader. You lose your heavy, you lose this stuff. It's like, oh, I should have saved half of those, right? That gets cushioned significantly. That guy is still 1 plonk away from all those dudes being toast. Like, they are on their last leg, but they still have all the offensive power that they had going in. So you're cushioned from that 1 bad save being really fluky, um, and messing with your whole game plan. Now you've got to get those guys out of there, right? Because it's just the 1 dude left. Like, you still want to get them out, or you want to get them. You still want to go with them early, but maybe you want to take a shot instead of just running. I don't know. You have some options here. One bad roll is less of a nightmare than it used to be. All right. So what can we anticipate meta design wise as trickle down from this? I think critical loses some teeth into troopers as a result. Critical is the best keyword in the game right now. I talk about this in like maybe there need to be more unit types in the sameness problem video. And critical still very effective, right? It gets hits past cover. But those hits don't necessarily reduce return fire potential. So getting into position early, where you can aim shoot back, becomes highly rewarded, right? Um, you're at less risk of just like the all critical T21 wall, just walking up and just putting more hits in where then you can't return fire in any meaningful way, right? That becomes a lot less of a guaranteed problem. Because yes, they'll walk up and shoot you, but you got there first, so you'll be able to aim shoot back at full force until that squad's toast. So like I think it helps a little bit with armies that want to claim territory early versus critical. So I think critical stock down a little bit. Still great into armor, still great into cover, right? Like still very, very good, but it's not just like the absolute gold standard keyword that it is right now. Heroes basically all become Pierce immune, right? They're not single wound minis, so they're not going to get scooped by Pierce. Um, this is a little buff to some of the chumps you see on screen that are, fine in Cassian's case and not particularly fine in Lando and Jin's case. Like Han, Pierce is a real concern. Uncanny luck, where he can't be pierced, becomes quite tough. I think this is probably fine. All the lightsaber heroes are immune pierce. Just make all those dudes immune pierce. 2 hit point models become immune pierce. Wookiees, this is maybe too scary. I don't know. It's probably okay. They don't make a lot of saves anyway. Um, like B2s could certainly use the buff. It's pretty good for B2s. Medics are generally less timing sensitive, right? Because you've got wound tokens there to pick up anytime, which is nice. So your medic investment is a little more straightforward. Um, it sort of becomes a lot more like repairing a vehicle. Seems okay. Um, I think you leave restore and pierce functionality is the same. So timing would matter for pierce shots, but not for anything else. I think expensive special forces units are a lot more survivable. I think like Mandos, Death Troopers become not just like viable in 2 different builds. Um, certainly helps Pathfinders with Danger Sense. PXs, love it. Aggro units, stock goes way up. This is made like BSE is a little bit scary because you can't be like, oh, it's gonna hurt when it gets here, but maybe I could kill most of them, right? You gotta finish them off or suppress the heck out of them. So that one's a little spooky. But in the case of like fleets and snows and B2s, I think it's great. I think it's great for all those units. I think Eastim stock goes up. I mean, 2 extra hit points when you can keep your whole squad around for that one last shot. Ooh, spicy. Impervious. I think Impervious is probably fine how it is. Um, you get to roll an extra die, but I think it washes out. I think that one's fine. I'm less sure about that. It's got a question mark, but I think it's probably fine how it is. Hunter, price hike, probably needs a price hike if you did this, right? Because now you're getting a name, everything's got wounds uh, on the table. So I think Hunter probably has to go up to 10, maybe 8, at least 8. 10 would not freak me out. Pierce maybe needs a price drop, right? It's not quite the value it used to have. Um, it's a little more specific at what it's good for, which I think is okay. Choke maybe goes back to removing a mini. I think that's still Defender's choice, but I think you take Choke back to removing a mini. Um, Pierce could also be optional. It could be I dealt a wound, so I'll just remove a guy now, or cancel a block into armor and everything else. I don't know. That's these are sort of like second level questions. Unknowns. What happens to game time if you do this? This I'm not sure. I could see it going up because you have more minis to move for the majority of the game, right? Uh, as models are coming out of squads, it's faster to just physically move 1 to 3 dudes, right? I just have this unit leader. I'm done, right? I got this guy. Now I gotta cohere everybody, even though I got, you know, left on 1 wound, and I gotta move my pile of tokens. So I gotta keep the tokens with the squads, right? Like there's maybe more stuff to fiddle with for the majority of the game. Does it decrease? There's more offense on the table at all times, so potentially things die faster. Maybe? I don't know. I don't know. I can't tell with game time. I thought Blitz would make the game faster, and it's pretty much the same. Played about 15 or so games of Blitz now. It's basically the same. All right, so summary. We want to revise the wound application to raise the tactical skill floor, right? So units don't remove minis when they gain wounds. This is just a recap of the rule change. When a unit has wounds equal to the number of hit points for the unit, the entire unit is defeated simultaneously. And Pierce removes single HP minis immediately if any wounds are gained, instead of canceling blocks. That's the proposal. I'm curious to see what everybody thinks. I know change is horrifying. Um, and Indy has a pretty vibrant Legion scene, but I'm seeing like all of our casual guys bail over the last year. All of our casual dudes have bailed, at least on the north side. Um, and dudes cycle in and out of games. Like this is a normal thing. It's a long time to play a thing. Game's getting pretty old. Played lots of it. Um, it's easy to burn out, and the release schedule has been slow, so there's not like a good drip of new content to keep people super engaged. And if you only play one faction, that release schedule is real slow, really slow. Which, I've definitely seen that alone burn people out of the game twice. We've had guys who are just like, I just want more stuff for my one one faction, and there's just never new stuff. It happens. So, yeah, I think Legion has a skill floor problem. I think Blitz is designed around addressing the turn zero issue, but I think the problem is actually bigger than just Blitz. Blitz is nice because it's so elegant. It's one change, right? It's one very small change. All the things basically all keep their same identities. None of the rules change. It's just the size of the board. It's super elegant. It's great. And I think it really moves the needle. This, more of a change. More delta here. I think there's some trickle down stuff that would need to turn into errata and so on. So don't worry, when AMG gets rid of it, I'll just update the mod. We'll be fine. We'll just play this. But in the meantime, here it is. I throw my rambling into the void, which is your brain, uh, for comments and reactions. And in the meantime, we'll all just keep playing Blitz, and I'll see you at Worlds.